Muslims in China, and they live mostly in the northwest region of Xinjiang. I think I pronounced that correctly. But without further ado, let me speak to my guest. Let me introduce you to my guest. It's Zumretay Arkin. And Zumretay Arkin, she's a program and advocacy manager of the World Uyghur Congress, and she's the spokesperson for that organization. And she's going to be telling us why the Chinese government and the Chinese Communist Party is insisting on those re-education camps, and why they are trying to force the Uyghur Muslim population in the northwest of China to renounce Islam billah, and all that persecution. They're under a great amount of scrutiny. Without further ado, Zumretay joins me now. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you so much for having me here. And Ramadan Kareem Mubarak to everyone as well.
Ramadan Mubarak to you, and it's a great pleasure to have you on the program, Zumretay. Thank you so much for your time. I think most Uyghur Muslim people that you are going to meet are going to be outside of China. There's quite a number of Uyghur Muslim people that have left the country. Perhaps if you could just give us the background as to when did the persecution of the Uyghur Muslim population begin in mainland China?
Well, the persecution, I think, in the mainstream media has been portrayed as it began in 2017 with the camps, but that's simply not true. The persecution began decades ago, when even centuries ago, I think, Uyghur people went through colonialism, and in 1949, actually, our land was occupied and colonized by the Chinese Communist Party. So the Uyghur people actually had lived independent republics in the 1930s and 1940s, and it was very short-lived, and it was overthrown with the help of the Soviet Union at the time as well. But so I think during, even back then, the persecution persisted against the Uyghurs because we are ethnically very different. We are Turkic people, so we share a very different, distinct culture. Which is a closer culture to all the other Turkic people in Central Asia. You think about Kyrgyz, Kazakh, Uzbeks, but also Turkish people. We have a distinct language as well, which is a Turkish language. We do not speak. We have learned to speak Chinese, but our language is distinct. And of course, another unique part of our identity is our religion as well. We are majority Muslim in East Turkestan, actually, the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region that we refer to as East Turkestan, because Xinjiang for us is a colonial name. It literally translates to new territory, which was given by the Chinese government. So Uyghurs, we refer to the region as East Turkestan. And so this repression, of course, when you think about even during the Cultural Revolution period under Mao Zedong, ethnic groups were severely persecuted as well, not only Uyghurs, but also Tibetans, Mongolians, and other groups as well. But Uyghurs have always had always faced this, various forms of discrimination, whether it's at the, basic level, local level, but also in the government circles, but also, just out in the streets blatantly. Uyghur people were always considered as the poor and uneducated people, and this is the brainwashing that was facilitated by the central government, which then, had painted this false image or false depiction of Uyghurs to the entire Han Chinese people. So you can imagine with that kind of bias, you can imagine to what kind of discrimination it can lead to. So, for example, my parents all went through the re-education camps during the Cultural Revolution period, and even my great grandfathers and my grandfathers and my other family members have gone through these forms of discrimination, which only led then to for example, many generations of Uyghurs to exodus, so to leave and migrate to other places, which of course led my parents to also make that decision. But I would say that they were defining moments in the history that furthered the repression against Uyghurs. These defining moments can be around the sorry, having a call. These defining moments can be also, seen as the Hulja massacre in the uh, early 1990s, where, Uyghur people were being forbidden to gather in gatherings to talk about things like religion or culture. And so Uyghur men took the streets of Ulja, which is a town where my grandparents are from, and they were all, arrested or killed even, and there was a severe police brutality that they faced. Because the central government was trying to really, I suppose, eliminate any forms of, association or gatherings where people could exchange ideas and exchange, freedom of speech and so on. So that was a defining moment. And then a few years later, 2009, July 2009, the Urumqi massacre happened, where similar thing, Uyghurs in the street of Urumqi, the capital region, took the streets and demanded the respect of their fundamental rights. And they were again faced by severe police brutality, which led to killings of Uyghurs, arbitrary arrest, and enforced disappearances of Uyghurs. At the time, I was actually visiting my country, and I was, also witness of these horrific abuses and discrimination. So with this, the Chinese government has, launched its Strike Hard campaign. So targeting, they have this thing that they call the three evils, which is splittism, separatism, and terrorism. So in 2014, when Xi Jinping also arrived to power, they made sure to quench any forms of dissent or opinion or any forms of resistance. And so they've started implementing, for example, mass surveillance technologies all across the region to really, repress Uyghurs in private environments, even in the privacy of their homes, also by sending officials into their homes to monitor their daily activities. If they were, for example, fasting, praying, practicing religion. So
Mm,
all behaviors that were, monitored by government officials. So this
mhm.
then led to these re-education camps that the government calls, to which we believe now, we estimate at least 3 millions of Uyghurs and other Turkic people are being detained arbitrarily since 2017 in these mass
Mm.
internment camps.
Yes. So, what happens in those camps? You spoke about your parents having been in those camps, and the Chinese government is not obviously allowing anybody to, broadcast from the camps, or at least go inside the camps. But are you able to tell us, just briefly what happens in the camps?
Yes. So just to clarify, my parents have gone through re-education labor. So at the time of the Cultural Revolution. So this is a bit different. So these internment camps, these are, they are interning people arbitrarily since 2017, as I've said it. And a lot of camp survivors have actually testified about the abuses happening in the camps and the conditions they were held inside these camps. So a lot of survivors are actually women who have testified about their experience and who have managed to flee years ago. And they shared their experience that, women are kept in, for example, around between 40 to 60 women are kept in the same cell. So it's very crowded. They have very limited space. The women take turns in when they sleep because there's just not enough space for everyone. They have a very harsh routine when they wake up at around 7 in the morning, and the first thing that they are obliged to do is to chant the national Chinese anthem and to pledge allegiance to the Chinese Communist Party and the president Xi Jinping himself, and basically thank the government for providing them this life, all they need. And they go through, so during the day they go through these like re-education classes where they are being basically de-extremified, I suppose you can call it, from their extremist ideas. But these people are not terrorists or not extremists. These are ordinary citizens who ended up there because the government arbitrarily detained them. These are scholars, intellectuals, athletes, also prominent figures, religious figures, anyone who actually just for their on the basis of their ethnic and religious identity, they have been targeted because of that. So the women, also the survivors, have testified that they also went through abuses like sexual abuse, so rape by the officials, forced sterilization on the women, which is actually part of this bigger campaign of the government to forcibly sterilize millions of Uyghur women, especially in the south region, to prevent them from having more children, inserting IOD devices in their bodies, and political, I suppose, brainwashing, but also torture, physical and psychological torture. So in this environment, really, a few people can survive, and those who survive, they are left with, a trauma that they have to carry on for the rest of their lives, and it is. Really inhumane torture and conditions inside these camps.
Mhm. Now, when people actually decide to leave the country, when they go and they escape from China, how difficult is it for them to maintain a relationship with people in China? For example, if parents have to escape China and maybe like go to Germany or in exile, are they able to be in touch with their children? Are they able to communicate with their families back in China?
One thing I have to clarify is that ever since 2017, I would say we haven't seen many Uyghurs who have left the country. Maybe there are just a few, less than 10 people who managed to flee, but in 2016, end of 2016, beginning of 2017, the Chinese government has confiscated all the passports of all Uyghurs living inside East Turkestan, but also in China, which prevents them from, traveling. So, for example, all our family members have had to give in their passports to the local police authorities. I remember because at the time when I still had contact with my family members, they told us, oh, they've confiscated our passport because we were trying to get them to visit Canada. And so this was actually a targeted campaign the government launched so that no one could get in, no one could get out. So, since 2017, very few people left, and the camp survivors who managed to flee, they only managed to flee because they possessed a foreign nationality, or were married to foreign citizens, and because of the diplomatic pressure, they were able to be saved. But for Uyghurs, we no, it just has been impossible. And Uyghurs in the diaspora community, we've lost contact with our family members beginning
Mm.
2017. So for all the past few years, we haven't been able to contact our family members at all.
Zumretay, here's a question I'd like to ask you, and this is with regards to the United States of America. They have been very vocal about the Chinese government or the Chinese Communist Party treatment of Uyghur Muslims. How do Uyghur Muslims feel about that? That America seems to be taking up their cause, if you will.
Well, I think for us, it's a huge sign of hope, and for us, any country who is showing solidarity and who is taking this issue up front is. For us, it gives us hope, because I mean we are ongoing genocide, and there are very few countries and nations who are speaking out on this issue,
Mm.
especially Muslim majority countries who have been extremely silent on this matter, and which is it should be a deep shame for these so-called Muslim majority countries, because these are not the values of Islam. When our brothers and sisters are suffering suffering in a corner of the world, we ought to speak out against these injustices and demand change. But if you look at it, Muslim majority countries are deeply, linked, or they have deep ties with the Chinese government, not only diplomatic but also economic ties, which, of course, they also have their own human rights abuses happening in their own countries. So they are benefiting from a mutual beneficial relationship. So when countries like whether it's the US, Canada, EU countries, or other countries are defending the rights of Uyghur people to be respected, are asking for change, for the basic fundamental freedoms of these people to be respected, I think it offers our community a sense of hope, and a sense of also, I guess, encouragement as well, because it sends us a message that our community has not been forgotten by these countries.
Absolutely. Now, one of the just a final question from you, Zumretay. What is your message to Muslims around the world in terms of what the Uyghur Muslims are requesting for them from them? I mean, you did mention the fact that majority Muslim countries are just not doing anything. But do you have a message for our viewers, for our listeners, in terms of what they can do to increase awareness for the plight of the Uyghur Muslims?
So we are now in we've just started the month of Ramadan. Us Muslims, millions of Muslims around the world, we are free to fast whenever we want, and free not to fast as well. But Uyghurs in East Turkestan cannot fast because the Chinese government prevents them from fasting. If they fast, they might end up in internment camps. And so just take this month to think about, this month is about connecting with your spiritual side, connecting with God, and also thinking about the less fortunate around the world, and giving to them. And so this is an ideal opportunity to really take 5 minutes of your day to think about the plight of the Uyghurs, what they're going through, and what you can do for them. It can be very simple. You can, of course, money is not always the answer. You can, of course, donate to charities who are doing great work to support Uyghurs around the world, who are doing advocacy or supporting Uyghur refugees. But you can also take your time to raise awareness among your own circle about the plight of Uyghurs, and you can ask your own government to act upon this. If your government is a Muslim majority countries, you can push these countries to speak out and break their silence, especially countries, OIC members, countries who are member of the Organization for Islamic Cooperation. These countries have a responsibility to defend Uyghurs like they defend the Rohingyas, like they defend Palestinians around the world. They have the same responsibility towards the Uyghur people, because we're not less Muslims. We are very proud Muslims, and we need the help of the international community, not only Western world, because this has to be a multilateral approach, and we need everyone to support us in these dark times.
Subhanallah. I think that's a beautiful way in which we could end the interview. Zumretay, thank you so much for your time. May Allah reward you and give you continue accepting the work that you're doing, and make it easy for you to continue to reach as many more people as possible. We really thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. That was Zumretay Arkin, and she's talking to us there from Munich in Germany, and talking to us about the plight of the Uyghur Muslims in China. And of course, she is the spokesperson for the World Uyghur Congress. And she was telling us there that in the month of Ramadan, it's very difficult for Uyghur Muslims to even fast. And if they kept fast, and if they refer to their country as East Turkestan, they are going to be taken to those internment camps and those re-education camps where they are taught to, forced to speak Mandarin, and in some cases even forced to renounce their deen of Islam. And she says, in this month of Ramadan, spare some moments to think about those in the Ummah who are not as fortunate, and if you are able to, increase the awareness that of the plight that they're actually currently living under. 29 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. This is the Iftar Drive. We'll be back. Stay tuned.